Hi, good afternoon. My name is Carly, and I'm here to present Mr. Joel Carver, your speaker for this session. He is the president and CEO of Carver, which is an Atlanta-based hospitality services firm, and boasts 40 years of sales management experience with top companies like Westin and Hilton. He's a renowned speaker, co-author, and recipient of prestigious awards like the Top 25 Minds in Hospitality Sales and Marketing. Active in the arts, Joel resides in LaGrange, Georgia with his husband, Dr. Van Millen, and he is deeply engaged in community service through the Carver Millen Donor Fund. If you would give a round of applause for Mr. Joel.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can we stay awake for 40 minutes?
Yes.
We'll try. So, I am really bad at standing behind a podium and lecturing. So if that's okay with you, I'm going to move a little bit. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to start at the beginning. And we're going to talk a little bit, you probably went, who is this man? And why in the hell is he wanting to talk about Pooh? And you probably want to go, who is Pooh? So let's back up. How many of us as children remember the story that our parents read to us as Winnie the Pooh? Oh, cool. Okay, so we're not starting from zero here. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Winnie the Pooh and his friends, right? That's where I want to focus our thoughts, because many of you are beginning careers or you're beginning again on careers. And believe it or not, Winnie the Pooh has a lot to teach us. So we're going to take an adult look at Winnie the Pooh. Now let me suggest you do not Google adult Winnie the Pooh. Not going to know who you think it is. But we are going to take an adult look at Winnie the Pooh. And we're going to see if we can pull, for us, philosophy, vision, or leadership. What can we get out of Winnie the Pooh? We're not going to go through a lot of Winnie the Pooh stories because there are way too many. But we are going to spend a few minutes delving into each character, or each of the main characters from Pooh, what their behavioral process was, how they think, and how can we use that in our life? Because I guarantee you, every one of us has an Eeyore in our life. Yes. No, I don't suppose. All right, so we're going to go through that, and we're going to see if we can use that to work through our lives. So, who is Joel Carver and why Pooh? Well, Carly told you a little bit about who Joel Carver is. And I'm going to go back and tell you a little bit more about who Joel Carver is and why we're talking about Winnie the Pooh and Winnie's friends today. So, in a lot of ways, I can relate to Pooh. In many ways, I can relate to Christopher Robin. But the most thing I can relate to is this really eclectic group of other creatures that Christopher Robin and ultimately Pooh surrounded themselves with, right? They have been part of a process that's a transition. I mean, how often do you get down and get a chance to speak to a tiger or a tiger, right? I don't spend a lot of time in my life talking to donkeys. I spend a lot of time, no, that's a different story. I do spend a lot of time talking to other people that have relationships with donkeys. But life has been a journey. My life has been a journey. And often, especially in groups like this, somebody will say, and I was at Johnson & Wales a couple of years ago in one of their lecture halls, right? 1,000 people, and there are all these students from Johnson & Wales that are in hospitality, and we were doing our thing. And I said, do you have questions? And invariably there's one that said, can you tell me how you planned your life? Planned my life? I barely showed up for my life. I never planned it. I never had an idea. I didn't know what was going to happen next. It was always a surprise. And when you kind of watch the way things play out in the 100-acre wood, we'll see how that works too. So for those of you who need a little bit of help remembering, let's talk about how the story began. And again, there are a lot of Winnie stories, so we're not going to get into each one of them. We're not going to delve into the storyline. We're just going to pull things from them. But let's begin. So here is Edward Bear. Now, Edward Bear is on his back being drugged down the stairs, right? Edward Bear is coming downstairs now, bop, 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 on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs. Because you think back, think how this plays out. A kid with his bear, he's dragging the thing downstairs every morning right behind him. So if the bear could think, it's like, this is the only way I could do it. But there's got to be another way. If only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it. And he feels perhaps that there is no other way. Anyway, here he is at the bottom, and now we're ready to introduce you to Winnie the Pooh. So that's setting the stage. The first thing we're setting the stage with is the only thing Pooh knows is how to come down the stairs being drugged, right? Bouncing on his head. A lot of our lives feels like we're being drugged downstairs, bouncing on our heads. And we stop and think, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? But until we know differently, we can't do anything differently. So let's do a little bit of history and a little bit of backup here. So what's the story on Winnie the Pooh? Just the mechanics of it. And I promise this won't be as boring as the first couple slides. But this was initially published in 1926, and the main character, Winnie the Pooh, is a good-natured, yellow-furred, honey-loving bear who lives in the forest surrounding the 100-acre woods. You remember that part of the story, right? I could sing you the song, but that wouldn't go well for any of us. So you remember the storyline. His companions are Eeyore, a gloomy gray donkey who's always losing his tail, and he never really knows what's going on. And then Piglet, a timid pig, and an owl, a pontificating bird. Owl is invariably the professor, right? And in a little bit, I'll tell you a story because I live in an over-degreed household, and Owl lives in my house. And you'll hear more about Owl later. And a meddlesome rabbit, a rabbit that thinks he needs to tell other people what to do and why they should do it. Anybody got one of those in the back of their mind that's a friend or a coworker or another student that feels like, they need to tell you what to do and why to do it because that's what the rules say? I mean, seriously, who cares what the rules say? That's a great example of, how to learn through adulthood. Leading, the first rule is break all the rules. Tigger, an exuberant Tigger, and boy, do I have a great story of Tigger. Kanga, an energetic kangaroo, who is a bit of a motherer, right? And her little baby Roo that lives in her pouch. So those are the characters that we're going to walk through today. So you're probably saying, well, how is Pooh relevant? Is Pooh relevant to anything we're doing or any place we're going? Well, that's the challenge today, is to see if I can help you draw a line between this story that you remember from childhood and this thing called adulting that gets on all of our nerves, right? I mean, it's really irritating half the time. Sometimes I'd really like to go back to being a kid. So here's the deal. Pooh was very relevant in 1926. Well, it's not 1926, right? It's 2024. But he was relevant in 1926 because he made friends. He accepted others just as they are, quirks and all. And we all have quirks, right? And all of our friends have quirks. And as we go through this, I'd love for you to just think through the process of all the people that are in your friend group, and that you run around with and hang around with and work with and do all those kind of things. And I guarantee you, they're just as weird as this group. Mine are, unless I can say that. He followed imagination and found adventure and friendship to overcome obstacles. Now, remember that all of these stories were written for a child, right? They were written for the author's son, whose name was Christopher. So that's where the stories come from. But if you start and read the stories again as an adult, you will take an entirely different look at these stories. So now let's make it generational for 2020 and see if we can do that. Contemporary culture, it's still, if you read the stories, you'll find those stories work today just like they did in 1926. It's all about navigating friendship, self-discovery, and life's ups and downs, right? You remember Pooh visiting Rabbit and eating too much honey and getting too fat and then getting stuck in the entrance to Rabbit's house and he couldn't get out. It's all about decisions, right? And Pooh had to make the decision. He's stuck. Now, how do we get out? Well, the only way to do it was not eat for a few days so that eventually Rabbit could shove him through the door and get him out. But it's a decision. It's life. It's life skills. It's this thing called adulting. And so if you pull it back and look at it today, we define it slightly differently. So now we call it a pretty chill bear, right? Laid back bear, cool. He's got it going on, and his friends. It's the same thing. Now we talk about good vibes and adventures. It's the same thing as it was in 1926. It's just through a different lens. And like many folks in generations, and we're going to look at generations in just a second, Pooh was on a quest for quality of life. And a lot of us now are talking more about quality of life and less about achievements and less about work and less about doing all those things and more about ourselves and our families and how we spend time with each other and how we build those relationships. That's a lot more important to us than it was in, well, me. Right? I'm the old gray-haired 60-something, never mind how many, guy. And when my generation was all about work. It was not about relationships. And we did relationships really damn badly. And now we have a generation that's beginning to focus on themselves. And that is not a bad thing. But it's what Winnie the Pooh did. It's what Winnie the Pooh did in 1926, and it's what Winnie the Pooh does in 2024. And at the end of the day, the entire Pooh stories, all of them, are wrapped up and they're all about friendships and embracing your quirks and the quirks of the people you're around every day and living your best life. And if we get anything out of our time together today, it's how do we live our best life and how do we make ourselves happy? That's what I really want us to get into. But in order to do that, and in order to pull Pooh apart a little bit, we have to spend just a couple minutes on some data, right? So first of all, let's think about the generations we've got here. Traditionalists, so this is my parents' generation, born from 1925 to 1945. I had one parent that was slightly before that, and one parent that just fell into it. Baby boomers, which is my generation, from 1946 to 64. Gen X, 65 to 80. Millennials, 1981 to 2000. Z, 2001 to 2020. And of course, now we're getting Generation Alpha, right, coming in. They're the ones that are just being born, and they'll come along next. And we see different things. And what I'm going to focus on for just a second is motivation and communication. All right? So let's think about it for a second. My parents' generation were motivated by respect, recognition, and long-term value in one company. My parents' generation, they started a job and they worked that job or that type job for their entire lives. They enjoyed personal touch communication, handwritten notes, and email didn't exist. That was not a thing for them. All right, baby boomers, then comes my generation. And we were hated by the previous generation because we said we're going to do things differently. This story's going to come back around, right? Just get ready. Okay? And in my world, they were motivated often by company loyalty, teamwork, and duty. And communication style is whatever is most efficient, including phone calls or face-to-face or later emails than text. We're okay with that. Gen X, all of a sudden a new word comes into play, right? It's that D word, diversity. Baby boomers weren't about being diverse. Trust me. We'll talk about that. But we did ultimately lay some groundwork for the next generation. All right? Diversity, work-life balance. Yeah, Generation X was beginning to get it because they'd seen what we had done and they saw we did it really badly. Okay? And communication style, again, whatever's most efficient. Millennials, now the rubber's beginning to meet the road, right? Things are getting different. And now we're getting to the people in this room and we're beginning to think, okay, this is where we play, right? So millennials begin with responsibility, but then they begin to talk about the quality of their management and unique work experiences. So they begin to think things differently. And their communication styles were IMs or PMs, text and email, right? They grew up in an era where that happened. So believe it or not, when I was in my early days, we had these things called secretaries. Amazing. And they were brilliant individuals. And they knew more about us. I remember having one in my early days in Washington, D.C., who had come from a career at the Pentagon. She had been an administrative assistant to an admiral at the Pentagon for all her career. She retired, she came into hospitality. And I walked into my office one day, I came walking in, I was walking up to her desk, and I just heard her on the phone. And I heard her say, well, if you're his mother, you know he's not polite till 9:30, you need to call back. Because there was no such thing as voicemail, right? Everything was hand-touched. It was a high-touch exercise. But when the millennials came along, we began to be able to do things differently. We began to be able to communicate more quickly. We began to do it more effectively by using things like voicemails. And so millennials taught the baby boomers a thing or two. And we didn't do a good job of teaching the millennials. But it's a different world. And then Gen Z comes along, and they're about the big D word again, right? Diversity. Let's look at things and people differently. Everything is personal. It's individual. It's creative. They're more about experiential life, right? They want to experience life. Good for them. They want to focus more on their families and their friends and their relationships than their job. Good for them, right? You get to a healthy balance. And the communication styles are now social media, so through a group, right? And text and items. So we've got these generational differences, and I set this stage with generational differences just to take us right back into the power of Pooh. And I want you to leave today taking something real out of this. And what this is we can look at the power of Pooh and what we're going to get from Pooh and realize that we can lay Pooh over 4 different parts, right? We can lay the things we learn from Pooh over our lives. And when I'm talking about our lives, yes, work is involved, but it's also our family, it's our relationships, our friends. It's how we interact with our community, how we give back, how we do all those things. And it's about problem solving. Pooh got stuck in the tree, in the door, right? Why did Pooh get stuck in the door? He got stuck in the door because he ate too much and he was fat. It was a decision Pooh made, and he had to take responsibility for that. The only way to get Pooh unstuck from the door was to lose weight. Now, I guess you could have carved a bigger door in Rabbit's treehouse, but that didn't seem to play into the story. We can also talk about Pooh and management. And as we walk through these characters, I'm going to give you some real-life people out of my life that play to these characters. And I want you to take that with you today. Because when you leave from here and you go home tonight, or you are meeting with a group this afternoon, you're going to see some of these characters. You're going to go, that's a Tigger. How am I going to act with Tigger? How do I get the most out of Tigger? And how do I have the best relationship with Tigger? And then you have to talk about success, because that's what you're planning for, right? Just out of curiosity, how many of you were either or were FBLAers? Okay, me too, right? High school FBLA, forgotten about it. Until I walked in the door today. It was really cool. When I got the agenda, I thought, that's a great thing. And did it really do things to prepare me for life? And I think that it did. And I think about what that gave me. So part of what we're doing is we're planning for everybody in this room to be a success. And that's where you want to be when you walk out of here. So let's talk about Owl. Owl is the brain. He's wise and full of wisdom, well, sometimes. He can be strategic in thinking and planning, but he lacks actual knowledge in how to get things done. You treat owls with respect and engage them gently, and they shepherd younger folks. Well, let me talk to you about an owl because I am married to an owl.
Oh, no.
And I will tell you the story about an owl. Okay? Last week, we were having, remember these weird storms that have been coming through about the last 10 days through Georgia? And it's been storming, it's been not storming, it's just right? You got the story. I looked up and I said, is it raining outside? The answer was, well, yesterday. I said, stop right there. The answer to, is it raining outside, never is and never will be, well, yesterday. It is, yes, it is raining outside, or no, it is not raining outside. All I wanted to know is if I need to get an umbrella. I don't care when the rain started. I don't care when the rain's going to stop. I don't care about the velocity of the rain. I just want to know if I need to use an umbrella. Okay? But I have a spouse. I told you earlier, I live in an over-degreed household. Okay? So just to give you a sense of the thought process. Undergrad, Juris Doctorate, so lawyer, degree of legal law, and so tax law, a master's in tax law. Didn't like that, MD. Thank you. You understand. It is an unusual thought process to live with. But it's what we do. And that's what OWL is. And every day I get to play out, what is OWL going to do today? There's a comedian, or was, she's now deceased, named Jeannie Robertson. I don't know if any of you ever heard of Jeannie Robertson. She built herself as a 6'2" tall humorist from North Carolina. She told great stories. If you're bored, go onto YouTube and look for Jeannie Robertson. And if you're really bored, Google "Don't Send a Man to the Grocery Store." Hilarious. But she tells a great story about left-brain people and right-brain people living together. Again, it's our household. We got it, right? And she talks about how to hang pictures with left brain. And she said her husband, who she called LB for left brain, right? A lot of people call him Jerry because that was actually his name, but she called him left brain because he was one. She said, he starts to hang a picture, he clears the wall, gets a tape measure, measures from the left side of the wall to the right side of the wall, finds the center, and he takes a pencil and puts a dot there. And then he measures from the top to the bottom, and he puts a pencil dot there. And if those two dots don't match, then we go for the best 2 out of 3. Trying to find the perfect spot to hang the picture. The right brain person in the household goes, picture, give me a hammer, give me a nail. It needs to be a tad higher. You want to make a left brain person crazy, use the word tad. How do you define tad? Again, this is the same thing. This is back to, is it raining today, right? So as we surround ourselves, we're going to have the owls out there. All right? Kangaroo. Kanga, in the Winnie the Pooh stories, you think about Kanga, right? She's the kangaroo running around. She's got Roo in her pouch. She gives motherly advice, and a little pint-sized perspective comes from Roo. Well, what about it? She may feel the need to mother other folks in the workplace who, quite honestly, neither need nor want to be mothered. Right? So if you've got the propensity to mother somebody in the workplace, you want to think that back just a little bit. Because they are adults. And I think about the wonderful woman that I worked with whose name was Judy. Judy was Kanga. She was a director of catering for me. And she loved to mother everybody and think she was helping them. And at the end of the day, they really wanted to do their own job. She was good at what she did, but she had a propensity to kind of get into people's business. So as you manage somebody, you have to go, boy, what do they really bring to the table? My business partner always reminds me to look for the 80%, which is, there's the 80-20 rule. You guys know about that? 80, you look for what people do well, and that's generally 80%. There's going to be 20% of everybody that you go, I wish they'd do it differently. But you buy off on the 20%, and those people, you tolerate the 20% because 80% of what they bring to the table is phenomenal, right? And Kangas bring that. And then there's Rabbit. Rabbit's the organizer. He can be rules-based, prides himself on keeping everybody and everyone in line, right? Rabbit is the one that when you were in high school would tell the teacher or the principal or whatever that little Joey is breaking the rules because he's not doing so-and-so. Yeah, that's Rabbit. This is this whole group of people. Rabbit's the one that you work with that goes, well, you got in at 9:02 this morning. I don't care, right? I used to work with a Rabbit, and he would literally come to my office and go, Joel, do you know that showed up at 10 minutes after 9 this morning? I'm like, and does he make all his numbers? Yes. Does he get all the job done? Yes. Then I don't care, right? It's 80%. We wrap ourselves in the 80% of what folks do well, and the 20% folks that they don't do well, we ignore. And that's okay. That's what we do. That's how we build our relationships. That's how we build our 100-acre wood. All right? Now, what Rabbit does do is help us focus on the right details and goals to see the big picture, because you can guarantee that the Rabbits of the world are going to be focused on those things, and you're going to know what they are. And then there's Christopher Robin. As we were driving up today, Carly, who's over here, you'll see her again in a second, because she's going to help us with some stuff in a minute, said, Joel, who do you think you are in this model? And I said, I think I'm a hybrid. I think I'm a hybrid between Christopher Robin and Pooh. And I'm not clear-cut in any one. How many of you guys have done performance indexes at some point in your life so far? A couple of you, okay? Those are really cool tools because they will help you understand what your personality traits are. And these are kind of liberally pulled from those, right? But to make it a little more entertaining as opposed to, would you like to be a D1? That sounds like something I'm going to get with a traffic stop. So, I'm a little bit Christopher Robin in that I was kind of the boy wonder. I don't really orchestrate every adventure because that's not my role. Lead with bravery. We're going to talk about that in a second because that's where you're going in life. And I'm going to try to move along because we started a few minutes late, so I'm going to try and still bring us in close to on time so you're not hanging out late all afternoon because of me. Leads with bravery and can be a risk taker. Well, in our organization, there are four senior executives, but 3 are managing partners, okay? So we each have very strong roles. There's myself, I serve as the CEO. There is Charlene Carter, who serves as Chief Development Officer. And there is Susan Hart, who serves as Chief Financial Officer. All right? Now, Charlie Carter is a risk taker at heart. She will try anything, well thought out or not. She's going to try it. And that's great because her title is Chief Development Officer. She leads a team that develops relationships, and she's willing to take a try and do something different. Because if we're not doing things differently, we're not moving forward, right? About 16 years ago, 17 years ago now, I walked into a new job. And I was Senior Vice President of Marketing for an organization based in the Twin Cities. And the president of the company, on my first day, called me into his office and he said, here's what I'm going to challenge you with. I want you to get it right 51% of the time. That's a pretty low bar, right? Feels like it. And I said, you want to take that any further, Rob? And he said, yeah. He said, because your role is leading every revenue that we bring into this company. He said, that means you need to try new things. He said, if I told you I wanted to try new things and get it right 90% of the time, you'd never take any risk. He said, I want you to get it right 51% of the time because I want you to take risks. And I want you to be able to walk into this office. Now, bear in mind, my office was only right next door to it, so it's not like I had far to walk. But he said, but I want you to be able to walk into this office and say, we screwed that up. And he said, I want you to be able to say it with a straight face and not worry about it. So, Christopher Robin's a little bit of that risk taker. I take risks, but in my role today, I ride the fence between the Chief Development Officer as a risk taker and the Chief Financial Officer who bills herself as a conservative. Well, let me tell you, let's define the word conservative first of all. What that means is she weighs the odds toward the negative every time. If this person says revenues are going to be $15 million this year, she's over here going, I think it's going to be more like 12.5 million. I don't care. Right? It's more than it was last year. Get in the middle. We manage these two people. We manage their personalities. That's where Christopher Robin comes in. Now, Piglet is a sweetheart. And the Piglet is a sleeper. Right? Piglet is a tender heart and small in size and really freaking loyal to his friends. Piglet often plays the role of number 2. Piglet can be afraid of taking chances. Susan Hart, my CFO, I love her. She is one of my best friends. We've worked together for over 20 years now. But so help me God. If there was a chance that she would fall off this stage, she would never get on it. She'd say, I'm being conservative. You're not being conservative, you're being a wuss. Get up there and say what you've got to say. But Piglet is this really gentle creature who can come along and who can coax people and help them get along, right? So I had in a hotel I was general manager of early in my career when I quickly found out I didn't want to generally manage anything. I had an executive housekeeper resign, and when she resigned, because I walked into the hotel and I wrote my name in the desk on the grand piano in the lobby. And we had a little visit in my office shortly after that about the fact that I did not want to be managing a hotel where I could write my name in the desk on the piano in the lobby. Well, she decided she would get me, she was just going to leave. So she left and took an entire housekeeping staff with her because they were all related. And there was this young, wonderful woman whose name was Carolyn. And Carolyn was the number 2. Carolyn was a Piglet. And I called Carolyn into my office and I said, are you interested in the role? And she said, no. No. I said, well, why not, Carolyn? I said, you manage the team. That's what you really get them to do everything. I've seen that. She said, yeah, but I can't be mean. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, we had the good cop, bad cop routine down for years. She said, I was the good cop. I was the one that made everybody happy. I was the one that got the schedules done that made them happy to be there. I did all that. I was the warm and fuzzy one. And she said, and she, this woman whose name now I can't remember, was the bad guy, and she was the disciplinarian, and she did all these things, and I said, okay, Carolyn. And she said, quite honestly, I can't be right? We know the right word, right? Yeah. She said, I can't be that person. And I said, Carolyn, you don't have to be that person. I said, if you need that person, then we'll hire that person, right? You continue leading the way you have always led. And Carolyn said, okay, I'll try it for 90 days. And if I don't like it after 90 days, will you just promise me that you'll support me and go back to my old role? Yep, sure. Got it. So jump forward 3 days. 3, not 90. 3 days after this conversation. And I'm driving up to the hotel, and as I drive up to the hotel in the morning, I pass the front door to turn into the garage. And as I pass the front door, I see Carolyn standing at the front door like this. And there are 2 adult men on their hands and knees with toothbrushes, scrubbing the front door, the cracks in the front door. And Carolyn is standing there looking down at them. So I'm like, that's curious. So later in the day, I passed Carolyn and I was like, Carolyn, just drop by my office when you have a minute. She said, is something wrong? I was like, nothing wrong. I just got a question. So later in the day, Carolyn comes in. She said, what's wrong, Joel? I said, nothing's wrong. I said, 3 days ago, we had the conversation about you leading the housekeeping department, and you were afraid because you didn't want to be the bad guy. This morning, I drive by the front door, and you have John and Bill, whoever it was, down on their hands and knees with toothbrushes, cleaning the cracks out of the sliding doors where people come in. I said, what was that all about? And she said, you put your trust in me, and you said, I want a clean hotel. You gave me the ability to manage it however I wanted to manage it. She said, I realized that I have the ability to ride both pieces. I can still be the good guy. I can support people. I can make them feel glad to be at work. And I can still make sure we get the job done. She said, because Joel Carver is never going to walk through that door and write his name in the dust on the piano while I'm here. Carolyn and I have a long career together. Eeyore we talked about earlier. Eeyore was my regional director when I was at SVP. He worked for me for 7 years, and so help me God. I don't suppose. What is it? I won't tell you his name. He'd come into my office and he'd stand there and say, well, it was all I could do not to say, Eeyore, what do you want? Because, the line here is he could bring rain to any parade. But he was, as Eeyores are, still good at what he did. He was still able to manage his region. He had a lot of great skill sets, right? And that's what we need to get out of all of this, is every one of these characters, they're people in our lives. And every one of them has 80% good, and only 20% of we need to work with that. And then there's Tigger. Tigger is one of my closest friends. Tigger was also my boss in 1980-something. But she's now one of my closest friends and lives about a mile from me, strangely. We work together in Dallas, Texas. And now we both live in LaGrange, Georgia, a mile from each other. But to be overly confident, reckless, and fairly thoughtless. This woman can come bouncing into a room and everybody in the room loves her, and she's happy and she knows everybody and it's a great relationship. But boy, she is off. You never know what's going to come out next. How did that happen? Okay, as an example, we had a long conversation a couple weeks ago with another Tigger, who came in and said, I really want to do something different. I'm thinking about going to France and buying a chalet and restoring it. Cool. And we left for vacation. She left for France the same day to go look at a chalet that she was interested in buying. Jumped forward, saw some pictures, got some updates on Facebook, yada, yada, yada. We come home, we get together for dinner. So what did you decide about moving to France? Oh yeah, I put my house on the market. I'm moving to Hawaii next week. Okay. So when I get home this afternoon, she's going to be living in our guest room while her house is on the market this weekend because she's moving to Hawaii in 2 weeks. Selling everything and moving to Hawaii. But a great person. And this uncontrollable zest the winner is, it keeps everybody motivated. The negative to it is, it can make them lose focus. Because focus is not Tigger's strong suit. And then there's Pooh, right? And then there's Pooh. Kind and friendly, a genius, a good leader, displays an knack for being very optimistic during times of despair and courageous in tough times, leads with heart, empathy, and compassion, good-natured, and roll with the punches, and a good friend to all. I'm about 50% of this. Not including the fact that I'm round like Pooh. I didn't count that in the equation, right? But I can be kind of generous. But as a friend of, or one of my coworkers says, if the world is coming to an end, you want Joel Carver in your corner, right? Because he's going to be okay. My organization suffered an IT hack this week. It is the last thing you want to happen. Well, the last thing you want to have happen is your organization go out of business. But we suffered an internet hack, right? That's happening to a lot. I got a letter from AT&T yesterday. We've had a hack, and this information's been compromised. I know all about it. Got the story, got a t-shirt, right? And during that time, I was like, okay, back up, back up, back up. How do we get up here and look and see what happened? What we need to do is how do we make sure we fixed it, how to make sure that all the information is secure, and then once we get through all that, we'll go back and go, okay, what happened? Was there anything else we could have done? Was there anything else our internet partners could have done? How did we do differently? I can do that. But they will also tell you, if you screw up Joel Carver's lunch order, woe be unto you. And that's the standing joke at our house too. If the world's coming to an end, Joel's got it, right? Who can deal with it? But if you screw up something really little that you should have paid attention to, then I'm not really happy. And the quote is, you remember the, if mama ain't, yeah. In an organization, when your name's on the door, you can apply that same logic, right? So, I'm a little balanced between Pooh and, so we're going to just jump through really quickly because we've only got about 5 more minutes. But I want to take you through these quotes that come directly from the Winnie the Pooh books. And I want you to think about this. This is the most powerful thing I will leave you with today. I always get where I'm going by walking away from where I have been. If where you are does not make you happy, then it is time to what? Make a change. If you see something that is an opportunity to better yourself, or to put yourself in a better situation, or take you to the next step, you have to do what? Go. Right? And we don't get anywhere by standing still. So as you grow your career, as you walk through these things, know that it is okay to go. Right? An old boss told me one time, you always leave when everybody loves you. It's powerful. You don't want to leave when everybody loves you because you're comfortable. But the reality is, after love comes, there you go. It's a cycle, right? And you need to move on. So that's the, I think if I give anything to you today as you enter into the career of the next stage, you got to walk away from where you've been to get where you're going. This one I want you to read to yourself for a second because it's important. And then I'll read it. Okay? So it says, when you think of things, capitalized, you find that sometimes a thing that seemed very thingish inside you is quite different when it gets out into the open and has other people looking at it. And what that means is it's something we do to ourselves. We internalize stuff, right? I don't know if you do, I do. And I keep thinking about the same thing again and again and again about this could happen and this could happen and that could happen. And the reality is, probably none of that's going to happen. We've got to learn to manage ourselves. And then here's Piglet. The things that make me different are the things that make me me. And the things that make you different and make you that 80% of the wonderful, amazing contribution that you make to whatever your 100-acre wood is. That's what you are. And you need to own those things. And it doesn't matter if that thing is owl. And it doesn't matter if you want to start every sentence with, well, yesterday, not yesterday, I don't think yesterday's done. Right? We manage those people around us. But that's still, at the end of the day, it's what makes my husband a brilliant physician. He teaches at 3 medical schools. He is truly one of the most brilliant people I have ever met in my entire life. He makes me want to stab myself in the eye with a fork. That doesn't change anything. He's part of my 100-acre wood, right? And it's the things that make him him that make him successful. This is another one of those that I find funny. And it could be an Eeyorish, right? It's a weed. We need to pull the weeds. Well, weeds are flowers too once you get to know them. Yeah, we are getting ready to plant weeds in our yard for the spring. Really? You're going to plant weeds in your yard? Yeah. So as it turns out, the deer, which we have in our neighborhood prolifically, right? We put up a 6-foot fence, they jump over the fence. We put wire all the way down to the lake so they can't get around to the house, they just go down to the water and come back around. They're there. We try for no deer. We look up, there's a family of 6 having lunch out there on the back patio. It's part of life. So the next thing I heard was, I'm going to have weeds planted in the backyard. Have you lost your mind? We spend all year long paying people to get rid of the weeds. I said, no, the deer hate these weeds. If we plant these weeds, we won't have a deer problem. I don't know if anybody's told the deer yet, but I'll let you know how it plays out, right? A fly can't bird, but a bird can fly. We can only do what we can do. We can only do what is our 80%. And in management, what do we have to do? We have to make sure that people are cast correctly. My business partner is brilliant. She always says, if we're having a struggle with someone, her first question is, have we miscast them?
We're wrapping up.
And the last one, you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And that's as you take this next step in your career and you finish your education, you go with that. No matter what you're doing and no matter what you're facing, you got this, right? Because you're a combination of all these people in 100-acre woods. You're braver than you believe, you're stronger than you seem, and you're smarter than you think.
Yes.
And my favorite, if the string breaks, try a different string.
Came in late.
It's fine. Get it right 51% of the time. So this is all about the power of Pooh in you.
Came in late.
And I hope if you don't leave with anything, is you'll remember that it's okay to be a child again, and then look back at a children's book and reread that children's book as an adult, and you'll see a whole different thing. Because what Pooh teaches is diversity is the norm. We're all different. We all bring different things to our 100-acre wood. The group looks for information, but sometimes you get information overload, and that can cause stress. Pragmatic, financially minded, all the characters work together to make sure they got it. And they solve the problem. They solve the problem with Pooh in the trees, or in the door. Pooh and his friends face struggles like mental health issues head on and support each other. We are dealing in today's world with more mental health issues than at any time in times past. And we have to embrace those, and we have to find a way to support each other through them. And the bottom line, every one of them, every character that we talked about, even though they all bring struggles, they bring 80% of really powerful stuff. And this is the quote from the actual author that said, I found somebody just like me, and I thought I was the only one. Because we all think that we are different, and we are, but we're also more different than we're not. So I hope as you leave, I hope as you go forward, you will take this, you will remember Winnie the Pooh, and if you have time, go and buy the children's books, right? Not the little 5-word books, but the real, actual Winnie the Pooh stories, and you read them as an adult, and you read them as what can I take from them.